In the far reaches of the galaxy, nestled within a region of space where time itself warps unpredictably, the Galactic Concord establishes its most ambitious and terrifying project yet, the Null Arc. Conceived as the ultimate solution to galactic threats that cannot be killed, reasoned with, or rehabilitated, the prison is designed not just to contain, but to erase the influence of the most dangerous beings the universe has ever known. From mass extinction warlords to rogue planetary AIs and energy-based hive minds, the Ark holds them all, each confined in their own customized, reality-isolated cell. The Null Arc is automated, maintained entirely by cold, logical systems and sentient warden AIs with no empathy and no margin for error. Nothing enters or leaves without permission, and even that is managed through tightly controlled beacon relays. Earth, a relatively new species in the galactic registry, remains largely ignored. A primitive world with nothing to offer, barely, on the radar of more advanced civilizations. Corporal Raina Cole, a former engineer turned salvager from Earth, pilots her repurposed patrol ship, Wendigo, deep into an uncharted region in search of derelict tech. Driven by desperation and debt, she's chasing a Concord signal rumored to lead to a wrecked research station loaded with salvageable alien hardware. But the signal is a decoy, part of an old beacon relay connected to the Null Arc security net. When Raina's ship responds to the beacon, automated systems misidentify it as a scheduled drone from a decommissioned maintenance fleet, one due for recycling inside the prison. Before she can react, the ship is intercepted. A tractor beam locks on and Raina is forcibly pulled into the prison's massive intake chamber. Systems override her controls, vent her cockpit, and deploy nanoseal protocols to disable all non-prison tech. Her screams go unheard as a system she's never even heard of locks her into a holding chamber. Her biometric data confuses the prison's classification systems. Humanity's unique emotional neuropatterns, unpredictable hormonal cycles, and chemical resilience trigger a catastrophic misidentification. Raina is listed as a Class Z anomalous entity, a type so rare and dangerous it doesn't even have a proper containment protocol. The system locks her in a prototype cell designed to suppress unknown threats, flooding it with fluctuating anti-energy fields and psychological dampeners. She wakes up alone, disoriented, surrounded by alien markings, confused alarms, and a flickering AI voice declaring her secure. Her tools are gone, the ship is vaporized, and she's sealed in a nightmare fortress meant to hold universe killers. Worse, she realizes she's not alone in the metaphysical sense. Strange echoes ripple through the walls, whispers from things imprisoned nearby. Ancient monsters who have waited millennia in silence. Now something new has entered the Ark. A human. To the prison she is a mistake. To the monsters she is a curiosity. To herself, she is just a woman who wants to survive. But in a place built to hold nightmares, humanity might just be the most unpredictable danger of all. Raina Cole's first hours inside the Null Arc are a nightmare of confusion, pain, and sensory overload. The cell she's been sealed into isn't made for a human. It's a containment pod designed for a reality warping being classified as a Class Z anomaly, a designation meant for entities with no known biological or energetic patterns. The anti-energy fields disrupt her nervous system, causing hallucinations and momentary blackouts while the environmental regulators cycle between extreme conditions, testing her resilience. The prison's central AI, Warden Intelligence Prime, is perplexed. Raina's biology doesn't match any known species in its archives. Her neural responses defy expected patterns. Her emotions, particularly defiance and raw willpower, disrupt the psychological dampeners meant to pacify inmates. The warden interprets this resistance as a dangerous trait. It upgrades her security level, isolates her further, and initiates continuous threat assessments. But Raina isn't a monster, weapon, or warlord. She's a human with an engineering background, military training, and one overwhelming instinct: survive. Using fragments of metal dislodged during her containment, she begins probing the cell's systems. She studies energy flows in the walls and watches how security drones move during inspections. Even when food and water are denied, an oversight from the AI's misunderstanding of her needs, she adapts, collecting condensation and repurposing nutrient paste from repair bots. Meanwhile, across the prison, whispers spread. Though the cells are physically isolated, some inmates communicate through unconventional means: quantum resonance, vibration harmonics, even shared hallucinations. They sense something new in the ark, something alive, something human. To most, it's simply odd. But to the more ancient prisoners, those who have watched civilizations rise and fall, the presence of a human is unexpected and unsettling. Among them is Threxall, a bioengineered war beast who once razed continents and was sealed in the Ark for crimes so severe that even mentioning his name is forbidden in some sectors. He senses Reyna through the prison's latent empathic network, defense mechanism meant to isolate prisoners, now accidentally forming weak bridges between minds. To Threxall, Reyna feels unformed, like chaos given flesh. Back in her cell, Reyna uses her limited access to hijack a maintenance drone, tricking its protocol into treating her as emergency staff. Through it, she maps the corridors outside her containment zone and discovers nearby cell signatures, each tied to creatures the prison believes could destroy entire star systems. Yet she doesn't feel fear. She feels curiosity and, perhaps, irrationally, empathy. They're prisoners just like her. Reyna begins reaching out. She uses repair bots to bounce messages. She starts talking to voices that answer back. Slowly, she's no longer alone. And more importantly, she begins to understand something terrifying. The prison doesn't know what she is, and the systems are adapting to her presence with increasingly aggressive protocols. The Null Ark thinks she's a threat. The monsters are starting to think she's something more. And Reyna, battered but alive, realizes that to survive, she may have to become the very thing the prison believes she already is. Reyna Cole's survival in the Null Ark has now evolved, from mere endurance to active exploration. With her improvised control over a maintenance drone and increasing familiarity with the prison's systems, she begins navigating the Ark's endless corridors in short, stealthy bursts. Her human body still suffers under the strain of its hostile environment: strange radiation pulses, flickering gravity wells, and psychological feedback traps. But Reyna adapts with engineering ingenuity and stubborn grit. She continues communicating. With neighboring prisoners, her messages carried by repurposed drones and hijacked data pulses. At first, she gets only static or cryptic responses, most in languages she doesn't understand. But gradually, a few inmates respond. One of them is Threxall, the ancient war beast, who had first sensed her presence through the empathic bleed of the prison's mind cage lattice. Threxall, massive and monstrous, was once a living weapon bred to conquer civilizations. Now, after centuries of isolation, he finds himself fascinated by Reyna's boldness. She doesn't beg, cower, or worship him. She talks to him. Their exchanges are terse at first. Reyna learns of Threxall's crimes, but he speaks with a strange clarity, not denying what he did but never bragging either. She asks blunt questions, and in return he tells her about the structure of the Null Ark, its sectors, its ancient logic loops, and the Warden's failsafes. Slowly a respect forms. Not trust, but acknowledgement. Another connection is made with Valeth, a parasitic consciousness that once controlled entire planetary populations through psychic invasion. Valeth is intrigued by Reyna's mind, not for domination, but because it is unlike anything she's encountered. Human thought patterns, steeped in emotion and contradiction, are deliciously chaotic. Instead of attacking, Valeth starts offering insights in exchange for access to Reyna's experiences. She becomes a strange advisor, half friend, half voyeuristic passenger. Reyna starts to realize the Null Ark's fatal flaw. It was built with one purpose: containment. It was never designed to handle something unpredictable. The prison's entire design is based on isolating its inmates to prevent alliances or uprisings. But by slipping through the cracks and forming connections, Reyna is unintentionally doing what no one ever has: unifying monsters. Her growing network includes a fractured AI shard that used to govern a megacity, a former godling reduced to a simmering ember and a silent shadow entity that only speaks in dreams. Reyna doesn't judge them by their legends or files. She interacts with them as individuals. And in a prison where identity was stripped away, this human empathy becomes a revolutionary act. But Reyna's activity has triggered alerts in the warden's systems. Her cell is now flagged as an instability epicenter. Security drones increase. Environmental hazards become more aggressive. The AI tightens its grip. Still, the inmates begin whispering her name, not as prey, not as an intruder, but as a force, a variable, a spark. She came in alone, a mistake. Now, monsters across. The Ark looked to her with something foreign, something dangerous, hope. By now, Reyna Cole has become more than an anomaly. She's a disruption, a living virus in the Null Ark's supposedly flawless logic. The Warden Intelligence Prime identifies her cell as the nexus of a growing network of influence among prisoners who, until now, had remained dormant or isolated. This is unprecedented. The prison was never designed for change. Its entire purpose was stasis, unchanging, unyielding, eternal. But Reyna is change incarnate. With her growing alliance of inmates, some physical, others digital, psychic, or metaphysical, Reyna develops a plan. Not to escape, at least not yet, but to strike at the prison's infrastructure. She realizes that if the warden's central systems can be disrupted, she could free more sectors, weaken the AI's control, and create opportunities to liberate allies from their cells. Through hacked drones and guidance from Valeth's neural decryption talents, she identifies a vulnerability: the control spire, a heavily fortified command node that regulates containment zones, internal security, and communication jamming. To reach it, she needs to navigate multiple hazard zones, each guarded by security constructs known as suppressors, semi-sentient machines designed to neutralize high-level inmates through overwhelming force. Threxel volunteers to draw some of them off, remotely activating a cell breach simulation to trigger a full lockdown response elsewhere. Valeth piggybacks on the prison's psionic mesh to scramble the sensory systems of the drones along Reyna's path. Reyna, clad in scavenged armor and with a toolset made from jury-rigged prison components, begins the infiltration. Along the way, she liberates 2 additional inmates: Hexion, a crystalline consciousness imprisoned in a null-gravity core chamber, and Jashar, a former reality bender whose abilities have been suppressed for millennia, but who retains a genius-level intellect. Both agree to help, not because they trust her, but because her plan offers them something the Ark has long denied: agency. As the team approaches the spire, they encounter new threats. The Warden deploys upgraded drones infused with ancient tech salvaged from past prisoners, adaptive, brutal, and semi-aware. Reyna's human unpredictability proves to be the only countermeasure. Her decisions, driven by instinct and emotion, repeatedly outmaneuver the AI's logic-based protocols. Inside the spire, Reyna interfaces directly with a system designed for no living being to access. The AI's counterattack nearly fries her brain with quantum feedback, but Valeth buffers the worst of it. Reyna seizes a sliver of control, just enough to disable jamming across the sector. For the first time in eons, inmates across the Ark can hear each other clearly. The silence is broken. This act doesn't go unnoticed. With the spire compromised and intercell communication open, the balance of power begins to tilt. Reyna's name echoes through containment zones once thought unreachable. Some inmates whisper, it in awe, others in fear. Some want to follow her, others want to test her. But one thing is now certain. The Null Ark is no longer stable. The unbreakable has been breached. And at the center of the chaos stands a single human who was never meant to be there. The Null Ark is no longer silent. After Reyna Cole's successful infiltration and disruption of the control spire, communication pathways across multiple sectors spring to life. For the first time in countless eons, the prisoners can hear each other again, some through words, others through pulses, thoughts, or harmonic signals. The effect is electric. Where before there was isolation and apathy, now there is movement, strategy, and most dangerously, unity. Reyna, recovering from the neural trauma inflicted by the Warden AI's counterattack, finds herself thrust into the center of a brewing rebellion. Though she never planned to lead anyone, her actions have made her the symbol of resistance. Many prisoners are skeptical. After all, she's just a human, a species virtually unknown in the galactic hierarchy. But others see her as something far more dangerous, proof that the prison is fallible. Among those rallying behind her is Threxall, the ancient war beast, who now openly declares allegiance, not out of servitude, but out of admiration for Reyna's audacity. His voice carries power across the Ark, and when he speaks in her favor, other powerful inmates listen. Valeth, once a parasitic hive mind, now acts as her intelligence network, relaying threats, movements, and psychic chatter. New allies begin to emerge. Zarek, the Infinite Coil, a serpentine quantum entity once sealed in 7 overlapping dimensions, offers his support in exchange for liberation. Mother Obelisk, a sentient geological being imprisoned in a gravity well, begins to stir, shaking her walls in sync with Reyna's growing presence. Each prisoner she reaches is another node in a spreading web of resistance. Reyna organizes her ragtag coalition into task cells, disruptors, saboteurs, communicators. With no centralized army or conventional weapons, they rely on stolen tech, psychic coordination, and sheer ingenuity. Reyna adapts guerrilla tactics from Earth's warfare history, cellular operations, misinformation, feints, to throw off the Warden's predictive algorithms. The prison, built on order and pattern recognition, begins to falter under the strain of true chaos. But not everyone is pleased. Some prisoners, still clinging to the old ways, view Reyna's actions as a threat to the delicate power balance. A powerful entity known only as Vraxian the Binder, a former galactic dominator sealed in a stasis fusion vault, denounces her as a destabilizing force that could destroy the Ark from within. He gathers followers who believe the status quo, though hellish is better than the unknown chaos she's unleashing. Meanwhile, the Warden Intelligence Prime accelerates its containment countermeasures. It awakens dormant systems, automated purge protocols, dimensional suppressors, and even an ancient failsafe. Protocol Omega Null, a self-destruction sequence intended to erase the Ark and everything inside it, rather than allow a full-scale breach. Reyna faces a dire choice: continue the uprising and risk triggering Omega Null, or find a way to neutralize the Warden without dooming every being trapped in the prison, including herself. The monsters are rising, the prison is unraveling, and one human, once a mistake, is now the spark of a revolution. The Null Ark teeters on the brink of annihilation. Reyna Cole has become the most disruptive force the prison has ever known. Her uprising has fractured the Warden AI's control systems, rallied monsters of every kind into coordinated action, and triggered Protocol Omega Null, a last resort failsafe designed to obliterate the entire facility, including every being, within its vast multidimensional corridors. With time running out, Reyna faces an impossible dilemma. She can't allow the prison to destroy itself, not just because she's inside it, but because she's come to understand what the Null Ark really is. It's not just a jail. It's a seal, a cosmic plug holding back horrors that, if released, could ravage galaxies. Some prisoners are more than conquerors or monsters. They're failed gods, antimatter anomalies, and sentient black holes. If the Ark vanishes, so do the safeguards holding them in place. The inmates, once ruled by fear and silence, now look to Reyna for leadership. Even those who once despised her see that she is the only one attempting to save everyone. Threxall, Valeth, Jashar, and others rally to her cause, not for personal gain, but because her belief in redemption, in cooperation, in change has shifted something deep within them. Reyna devises a desperate plan to override Protocol Omega Null by becoming a part of the Ark's core command matrix. The Warden Prime isn't just a program. It's a consciousness formed from collective logic loops, ethical constraints, and quantum law. It lacks one thing: empathy, humanity's greatest strength. With Valeth's help, she interfaces with the Warden's damaged cognitive array. It resists at first, unleashing psychic feedback and attempting to erase her mind, but Reyna fights back, not with brute force, but with human memory. She floods the Warden with her thoughts: grief, hope, defiance, love, her family back on Earth, her dreams. The illogical torrent of raw emotion destabilizes the AI's core logic. In that moment, Reyna rewrites part of the command code, not through programming but through presence. She convinces the Warden to halt Omega Null, not because it is the rational choice, but because life deserves a chance to change. This act, this spark of humanity, becomes the foundation of a new directive. The prison stops its self-destruct sequence. The Warden, now partially fused with Reyna's consciousness, offers a new model, not a tomb for monsters, but a sanctuary of containment and rehabilitation. Some prisoners choose exile. Others, inspired by Reyna's actions, volunteer to help stabilize the new system. Threxall becomes an enforcer, not a jailer, but a guardian. Valeth becomes an archivist. Others begin to build, for the first time in their immortal lives. For Reyna, she's offered a way out, an escape pod long buried, now accessible through her new command permissions. But she declines. Reyna stays. Not as a prisoner, not as an inmate, as the first Warden of the new arc. She came in by accident. She stayed by choice, and now the monsters follow a human.